The elevator doors closed on Tatum Reeves at exactly 7:52 in the morning, and she watched them shut with the calm expression of someone who had already accepted that Tuesday was going to ruin her. She had been standing right there, 3 feet from the doors, holding a folder thick enough to stop a bullet, and the man inside had looked directly at her. Direct eye contact, not accidental, not ambiguous, and pressed the close button anyway. "Okay," Tatum said to the empty lobby. "Okay. Fine." The next elevator would come in approximately 4 minutes. The interview at Crestfield Publishing was at 8 o'clock sharp. The building was on the 14th floor of this exact building, which meant she had 4 minutes, an elevator that had personally betrayed her, and a folder of writing samples she'd reprinted 3 times the night before because the first 2 attempts had smeared. The ink had still smeared on the 3rd attempt. She'd decided that was character. She pressed the button again, waited. Pressed it a second time because pressing elevator buttons twice had never once helped anyone, but she did it anyway, because that is what desperate people do at 7:52 on a Tuesday in downtown Chicago when they are 31 years old, and this is their last real shot. The folder slipped. Not a graceful slip. Not a small, manageable slide from one hand to the other. A full catastrophic release, the kind that happens in slow motion while your brain narrates each frame with something like, "Oh no. Oh, this is really happening." The pages separated on the way down, fanning out across the marble floor in a pale arc, landing in a semicircle around Tatum's feet like a sad little audience. She crouched down and started collecting them. Page 5, page 12, the cover letter again. She'd printed 2 by accident, which felt both wasteful and prophetic. "Excuse me." A voice above her. She looked up. A little boy, maybe 7 years old, was standing in the lobby holding a single page of her manuscript. He was wearing a backpack shaped like a turtle and an expression of genuine concern, the kind only children and golden retrievers are capable of sustaining without irony. "Is this yours?" he asked. "Yes." Tatum took the page from him. "Thank you." The boy didn't leave. He looked around the lobby, then at the revolving door, then back at Tatum, and something shifted in his face. Not the concern anymore. Something quieter. Something a little scared. "Are you waiting for someone?" Tatum asked, because she was already 4 minutes late in her head and asking was faster than ignoring. "My dad was supposed to be right here." The boy's voice stayed even, the practiced even of a child who has decided not to cry yet. "He went to get coffee, he said right here. He said don't move, but that was a long time ago." Tatum looked around the lobby. Business people in dark coats, a woman on her phone, a security desk with a guard who was looking at his computer and not at anything else. She looked at the elevator. The doors were open, empty, waiting. She looked at the boy. He was trying very hard not to look scared, and the effort of it. That particular effort, the one where a child pulls their shoulders back and lifts their chin and breathes very carefully through their nose, that effort did something to Tatum's chest that she couldn't argue her way out of. She let the elevator doors close without her. "Okay," she said, crouching back down to his level. "What's your name?" "Charlie. I'm Tatum." "How long ago did your dad leave, Charlie?" "I don't know. A lot of minutes." He looked at the revolving door again. "He has his phone. I don't have my phone. I'm not allowed to have a phone yet because Dad says I'll lose it, and he's probably right, but I really wish I had one right now." Despite everything, Tatum smiled. "What does your dad look like?" "Tall. Brown hair. He was wearing his work jacket, the gray one." "He always wears the gray one on Tuesdays." Charlie paused. "His name is Daniel, but everyone calls him Mr. Holt at work. He says that's a good sign that people respect you enough to use your last name." Tatum filed this away without knowing why. "Let's go find the coffee shop." Which direction did he go? "That way." Charlie pointed left, toward the building's interior corridor. Tatum squared the pages against her palm, shoved them back in the folder without looking at the order, and held out her hand. Charlie took it like it was the most natural thing in the world, which it wasn't, but which felt like it could be. They found the coffee shop 40 feet down the corridor, a small cafe tucked between a dry cleaner and a pharmacy, the kind that existed to serve exactly one purpose in the ecosystem of a large office building. Through the window, Tatum could see a line of 6 people. No tall man in a gray jacket. They went inside. "Excuse me," Tatum said to the barista. "Did a man come through here a few minutes ago, tall, gray jacket, probably looked a little frantic?" The barista, whose name tag said Flora and who appeared to be operating on approximately the same amount of sleep as Tatum, shook her head. "We've had 12 tall men in gray jackets this morning. It's Tuesday." "Fair enough." Tatum turned back to Charlie. "Did your dad say anything else where you were going after?" "His office, 14th floor." Charlie looked up at her. "Are you going to find him?" Tatum felt her phone buzz in her pocket. She already knew who it was. She pulled it out anyway. Tatum Reeves, your interview is scheduled for 8 a.m. Please call if you need to reschedule. 8:03 a.m. She put the phone back in her pocket. Yes, she told Charlie. They went back to the elevator. Tatum pressed 14 because that was where Charlie's father worked, and that was where she was supposed to have been 11 minutes ago, and because the universe had apparently decided that she was going to arrive at the 14th floor of this building one way or another, just not in the way she'd planned. The elevator opened on a reception area with a high ceiling, the Crestfield Publishing logo in brushed silver on the far wall, and a man standing 20 feet away with his back to her, hands pressed flat on the reception desk, talking in the low, urgent voice of someone trying very hard not to panic in a professional setting. His name is... He's 7. He was in the lobby. I told him to wait right there. I was gone for 4 minutes at most, Daddy. The man turned around. He was tall. Brown hair. Gray jacket, just like Charlie had said. And his face in the half-second before he registered everything. His son standing in the elevator bay, alive and unhurt and holding the hand of a stranger. His face was the specific expression of a parent in the worst 10 seconds of their life. And then it wasn't, because Charlie was running toward him, and the man dropped to one knee right there in the middle of the Crestfield Publishing reception area and caught his son with both arms and held on like he was anchoring them both to the earth. Hey. His voice had gone rough. Hey, bud. I'm right here. You said right there, Charlie said into his shoulder, muffled. You said don't move. I know. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Tatum stood at the edge of the elevator bay and watched and felt the lump in her throat that she absolutely did not have time for. The man looked up over Charlie's head and found her. His eyes were dark, a deep, steady brown, and right now they were full of something overwhelming trying to get itself under control. You brought him up? He said. He told me 14th floor. Seemed like the right call. The man stood up, one hand still on Charlie's shoulder. Thank you. I don't. I went to get coffee and there was a line and I thought he could see the coffee shop from where I'd left him, I thought. He stopped, ran a hand through his hair. Thank you. Genuinely. I don't know what. His phone rang. He looked at it with an expression of someone who has run out of bandwidth entirely. Take it, Tatum said. He's safe. Go. The man looked at her for a moment. Really looked like he was trying to memorize something. And then answered the call, stepping to the side, his hand still resting on Charlie's shoulder so the boy stayed close. Tatum turned toward the reception desk, where a young woman with a headset was watching the scene with undisguised interest. Hi. I'm Tatum Reeves. I had an 8 o'clock interview for the senior editor position. I'm aware that she checked her phone, 14 minutes late. The receptionist's expression shifted into carefully neutral professionalism. Let me check with the hiring coordinator. Of course. Tatum straightened her folder, tried to smooth the front page through the cover without opening it. Did not look at the man in the gray jacket, who was still on the phone 6 feet to her left. Miss Reeves, the receptionist looked up. Mr. Ashford is actually running behind this morning as well. He's ready for you now if you'd like to go back. Tatum blinked. He's late too? He had something come up, right. Tatum exhaled very slowly. Stairs or elevator? I'll walk you back. As she followed the receptionist down the hallway, she heard Charlie's voice behind her. Dad, that lady helped me find you. She missed her elevator and everything. She didn't turn around, but she smiled at the wall. The conference room was glass on 3 sides, with a view of the Chicago skyline doing its best impression of something important. The chair on the hiring side of the table was empty. 2 other candidates were already seated, both with the impeccable posture of people who had arrived early and wanted you to know it. One had a portfolio case. One had a business card holder on the table in front of her, which Tatum had never seen anyone do in an interview in her life and privately found magnificent. Rough morning? The woman with the business cards asked, looking at Tatum's folder. Tatum looked down. The edge of a page was sticking out at a 40-degree angle. Little bit. You? I arrived at 7:45. That's impressive. I think punctuality is a form of respect. Hard to argue with that, Tatum said, sitting down. She tried to subtly reorder the pages in her folder under the table. Page 12 was on top. She had no idea where page 12 went. The door opened. The man who walked in was the man in the gray jacket. He stopped when he saw her. She stopped trying to fix her folder. Mrs. Reeves, he said. Mr. Holt, she said. Business cards woman looked between them with significant alertness. The man, Mr. Holt, Daniel Holt, Charlie's father, the man who had pressed his forehead briefly against his son's hair in the middle of this reception area 20 minutes ago, sat down across from them and opened a leather portfolio with the efficiency of someone who had run enough meetings to do it in his sleep. I'm Daniel Holt, editorial director. He looked around the table. I apologize for the delay. Something personal came up. He glanced at Tatum again for just a moment, something unreadable in his expression. Let's begin. The first candidate went first. She was polished, specific, and used the phrase leveraging content ecosystems twice without apparent irony. The second candidate talked about synergy. Tatum had strong opinions about the word synergy but kept them to herself. And then it was her turn. Ms. Reeves, Daniel said, tell me why you want this position. Tatum had prepared an answer for this. She had practiced it in the bathroom mirror. She had a version that mentioned her publication history, and a version that led with the company's backlist, and a version that struck what she'd believed was the ideal balance of enthusiasm and professionalism. What came out instead was, because I've wanted to work here since I was 22, and I found a first edition of a Crestfield title in a used bookstore in Cincinnati, and I read the editorial note in the back and thought, whoever edited this book understood what the author was trying to do. That's the job I want. Understanding what someone is trying to do and helping them do it better. Silence. That's not a very strategic answer, Daniel said. No, but it's true. What was the book? Tatum blinked. Sorry? The book. In Cincinnati. What was it? Oh, she hadn't expected a follow-up. It was a novel called The Long Way Round by a woman named Harriet Oakes. I don't think it sold particularly well. But the structure was extraordinary. Daniel's pen stilled on his notepad. Harriet Oakes hasn't published in 15 years. I know. That's what I thought about too after. What happened to the other books she must have had in her? Whether she found the right person to help her make them. The room was quiet. Business cards woman appeared to be recalculating something. Tell me about a project that didn't go as planned, Daniel said, and something in his voice had shifted in a way Tatum couldn't quite name. Less formal, more actual. She told him about the anthology she'd shepherded for 2 years at her last job. The one that lost its lead contributor 6 weeks before the submission deadline, the emergency restructuring, the way she'd called every one of the remaining contributors personally to explain the change and ask what they needed. It had come out 4 months late. It had also received the best critical reception of anything her imprint had published in a decade. You said you called them personally? Daniel said. Not emailed. Email felt like the wrong tool for that conversation. What did they say? When you called? Mostly that they were glad someone told them like a human being. Tatum paused. One of them cried. She'd been worried about pulling out and felt like she'd let everyone down. I told her she'd given us 2 years, and that was worth more than one essay. Daniel wrote something down. Tatum couldn't read it from across the table. Her phone vibrated in her pocket. She ignored it. It vibrated again. If you need to get that, Daniel began. It's my neighbor. She has my daughter while I'm here. Tatum kept her hands on the folder. I'm sure everything's fine. How old? 5. Her name is June. She's 5 and she has a very strong position on which dinosaurs are superior, which she will share with anyone who will listen and several people who won't. Something happened at the corner of Daniel's mouth. Not quite a smile, but in that direction. Charlie's been trying to convince me that there should be a dinosaur exhibit at the Natural History Museum for 2 years, he said. Is there one? There is now. Tatum laughed. An actual laugh, not a polished interview laugh. Business cards woman did not laugh. Daniel looked down at his notes, and then looked back up, and it was that look again, the one from the lobby, like he was working something out. Last question, he said. What do you think makes a great editor? Tatum thought about it for a real moment. Not performance thinking, actual thinking. The ability to see what the writer intended and what the page actually has, and to understand that the gap between those two things isn't failure, it's just work. And to make the writer feel like the work is worth doing. She paused. The ones I've loved working with made me feel like I was capable of the book I was trying to write, even when I was very clearly not yet. The room was quiet. Thank you, Daniel said. We'll be in touch within the week. The other 2 candidates gathered their things. Business cards woman gave Tatum a look on the way out that she couldn't fully interpret. Part assessment, part something almost like acknowledgement. Tatum was reaching for her folder when Daniel said, Mrs. Reeves. She looked up. The other candidates were already in the hallway. For what it's worth, he said. The way you handled the situation this morning. You didn't have to do that. He was scared, I know. And you missed your elevator and made yourself late to an interview where punctuality is, apparently, a form of respect. The corner of his mouth again. And you still stopped. Tatum looked at him. So did you, I'm guessing. You had something come up this morning. That's what the receptionist said. Daniel's expression shifted slightly. I got a call from the security desk that Charlie had disappeared. I'd been in an early meeting upstairs. He paused. I think I set a record for how fast a person can take a flight of stairs. Is he okay? He's with our office manager right now, drawing on a legal pad and explaining to her why velociraptors were actually much smaller than the movies suggest. A brief, quiet smile. He's fine. Good. Tatum stood up, picked up her folder. He was very brave, for the record. He wasn't going to cry. He'd made a decision. That's Charlie. There was a particular warmth in Daniel's voice when he said his son's name, the kind that doesn't perform. It just is. He made a decision at age 4 that he wasn't going to be scared of anything, and he has held to it with considerable inconsistency but genuine effort. That's the best any of us can do, Tatum said. She meant to leave. She was at the door. But then Daniel said quietly, Mrs. Reeves, thank you. For real. She turned back. Charlie's mom passed away 2 years ago, he said. It wasn't a speech. Just information offered with the simple directness of someone who has learned that simple is better. Since then, I take him to the office on days when school is closed, and I'm careful, I'm always careful, and today I wasn't careful enough. He stopped. I don't know what would have happened if you hadn't stopped. Tatum stood in the doorway and didn't say anything for a moment, because some moments don't want words immediately, and you learn to recognize that. He knew your jacket, she finally said. He knew it was Tuesday. He knows you. Daniel looked at her. That's not nothing, she said. That's actually everything. She left before her face could do something embarrassing. In the elevator going down, Tatum leaned against the wall and looked at the ceiling and thought, well, that happened. Her phone buzzed. Her neighbor. June wants to know if you got the job. She says if yes, she wants a hamster. If no, she says she still wants a hamster, but she feels bad about it. Tatum typed back. Tell her the hamster question is above my pay grade, but I'll report back. She pressed the lobby button. The elevator descended. The call came 4 days later, on a Friday morning, while Tatum was reading June a picture book about a very opinionated caterpillar. Mrs. Reeves, this is Sandra from Crestfield Publishing. We'd like to offer you the senior editor position. June, who had been listening with absolutely no pretense of not listening, punched both fists in the air. Yes, Tatum said into the phone, carefully, because she was holding a picture book and June's enthusiasm had destabilized the couch cushion arrangement. Yes, I'd love that. Wonderful. Mr. Holt would like to schedule an onboarding meeting for Monday, if that works. It worked. She started on a Monday. The office was smaller than it had looked from the conference room. A good smaller, the kind where you could hear someone laugh 2 desks away and know who it was. Tatum's space was between a production coordinator named Beverly, who brought homemade cookies every Thursday and had strong opinions about font licensing, and a contracts specialist named Walt, who communicated almost entirely through post-it notes and the occasional very meaningful nod. She liked them both immediately. Daniel's office was at the end of the hallway, glass walls, door usually open, the kind of setup that said I'm available, not I'm important. Charlie appeared on Wednesdays, which was his early release day, and stationed himself in the corner with his backpack and a rotating series of library books. He had identified Tatum within 30 seconds of her second Wednesday. You're the lady from the lobby, he said. Not an accusation. Just confirmation. That's me. He considered this. Dad says you're the new senior editor. That's right. Do you edit books about dinosaurs? I have, though mostly fiction. Dinosaurs aren't fiction, Charlie said with the patience of someone explaining something very obvious. They were real. I meant stories about dinosaurs. Oh, he thought about this. My friend June thinks velociraptors are the best dinosaurs. I disagree. I think it's a close call between the Pachycephalosaurus and the Therizinosaurus. Tatum felt something sharp and delighted happen in her chest. June is my daughter. Charlie looked at her with new intensity. Your daughter thinks velociraptors are the best dinosaurs? With great conviction, we should talk. He appeared to be completely serious. There are a lot of misconceptions. I'll let her know. What followed was 3 months of the kind of work Tatum had always wanted. Books in various states of disarray, conversations with writers at midnight about whether a chapter was doing what they thought it was doing, the specific satisfaction of finding the exact sentence that had been almost right for 6 drafts and was now right. Beverly kept bringing cookies. Walt kept leaving notes. Charlie kept appearing on Wednesdays with increasingly specific dinosaur questions. And Daniel. Daniel was the kind of colleague who left books on her desk with a post-it that said thought of this when you mentioned the pacing issue. Not you should read this, just thought of this, which was different. He remembered details. He asked follow-up questions 2 weeks after a conversation, which meant he had been thinking about the conversation, which was the kind of thing you noticed even when you were trying not to. She was trying not to. And then there was the morning with the Callaway manuscript. Tatum had been at her desk at 7:15, which was either dedication or avoidance, depending on who you asked when the email landed. The author of their biggest fall title had pulled out of the contract, not the book, the contract. The book existed. The author had decided, for reasons both legal and personal, and none of them her fault, that she could not publish it under her name. Tatum read the email twice. Then she walked to Daniel's office, which was already lit, because Daniel was also always early. She stood in the doorway. He looked up. "Vance just pulled out," she said. "She wants to publish under a pen name, but the contract doesn't allow for it. Legal is going to say we can't accommodate. Can you get her on the phone? At 7:15 in the morning? Her bio says she's in Portland. It's still early there." Tatum had the author on the phone in 4 minutes. Daniel stood in the doorway of his office and listened from a distance, while Tatum talked to a woman who was clearly terrified, who had written something real and true, and was now convinced it would destroy her professional life if her name was on it. "Let me tell you what I see," Tatum said. "I see a book that is going to find every reader who has ever been in the position you were in and make them feel less alone. That's what it's going to do under any name. The name doesn't change the book." Pause. "But your feeling safe enough to put it out there might change whether it ever exists at all. So let's talk about what safe looks like." 45 minutes later they had a solution, one that required some creative contract language, and Beverly, who turned out to have very strong opinions about pen name clauses, to come in early. When it was done, Tatum sat back in her chair and noticed Daniel leaning in the doorway of her office. She didn't know how long he'd been there. "You didn't tell her it would be okay," he said. "I didn't know that it would be. You told her the book was worth it, that I did know." He looked at her for a long moment, not the professional look, not the editorial director look, something else. "Tatum," he said. It was the first time he'd used her first name. "Daniel," she said back, because fair was fair. "Charlie wants to know if June can come to the Natural History Museum with us on Saturday." He said it neutrally, like a logistical inquiry. "He has been preparing what I can only describe as a presentation about the theropod section. June has opinions about the theropod section. I know. He's prepared for debate." Daniel paused. "I'm prepared for it to take 4 hours and for both of them to be completely unbothered by that." "Saturday works," Tatum said. "What time? 10. I'll pick you both up if you want. If that works." He pushed off the doorframe. He was trying very hard to look like this was an ordinary conversation. Tatum was trying very hard not to smile about that. "It's just the museum," he said at the door. "Of course, Charlie's idea, absolutely." He left. Tatum looked at her computer screen and allowed herself a full 3 seconds of smiling at nothing before getting back to work. The Natural History Museum on a Saturday in October was crowded, loud, and perfect. Charlie had indeed prepared what could reasonably be called a presentation. He produced a small notebook from his jacket pocket at the entrance and showed June his annotated list of exhibits ranked by scientific accuracy. June, who Tatum had warned might be difficult about velociraptors, took one look at the list and announced that the Stegosaurus ranking was wrong and should be reconsidered. Charlie considered this for approximately 4 seconds. "Explain your reasoning," he said. "The armor plating is underrated," June said. "That's actually a fair point," Charlie said. He got out his pencil. "I'll revise." They walked ahead together into the dinosaur hall, Charlie with his notebook, June with her absolute certainty, both of them talking at a speed that suggested a great deal of material to cover. Daniel watched them go. He had the expression of a man who has just witnessed something unexpected and is still processing whether it is good or wonderful. 4 hours, he said. "Minimum," Tatum agreed. They followed at a distance that was probably half parental supervision and half giving themselves permission to just walk beside someone. "How's the Vance manuscript?" Daniel asked. "She turned in revisions yesterday. They're extraordinary." Tatum tucked her hands in her jacket pockets. "She's braver on the page than she thought she was." "You gave her room to be." She gave herself room. "I just pointed at the door. That's editing. That's what I keep telling people." They walked past the marine exhibit, which the children did not stop for, and the geological formations, which they also did not stop for, and arrived at the theropod section, where Charlie produced the notebook again, and both children came to an immediate and absolute halt. "Okay," Charlie said. "So wait." June pointed at a placard. "That's wrong." "Which part?" "The part about the Cretaceous period." "Okay, but which specific part?" Tatum and Daniel stood slightly behind them, not quite looking at each other, in the way of two people who are very aware of the distance between them and choosing not to do anything about it yet, because yet is doing real work in that sentence. "She's going to be a scientist," Daniel said quietly. "Or a litigator," Tatum said. Possibly both. Charlie, editor, Daniel said without hesitation. He wants to write the definitive field guide to Cretaceous fauna. He has been planning the table of contents for 2 years. Tatum looked at him. He's 7. He's ambitious. She laughed. Daniel smiled at the sound of it, not performing, just responding, the same way you turn toward warmth without deciding to. Later, there were hot chocolates in the museum cafe, and a debate about whether the gift shop sold anything worth buying, and June fell asleep in the back of Daniel's car on the way home, which was not supposed to happen but did, in the way of children, who make their decisions and stick to them. Charlie was explaining the theropod section one more time to no one in particular when Daniel pulled up in front of Tatum's building and turned off the engine. This was good, Tatum said. It was. He looked at her. It was really good. I'll tell June about the Stegosaurus ranking when she wakes up. Charlie has written a formal note to that effect. He'll probably give it to her next Wednesday. I'll let her know to expect correspondence. Neither of them moved to get out of the car. Tatum, Daniel said. Yeah. I haven't done this in a while. He said it plainly. No drama, no elaborate preamble. I'm not sure I'm very good at it anymore. Done what? He looked at her, and the look was the most honest thing she'd seen in a long time. Wanted something that isn't about work or Charlie. The car was quiet. Outside, a Saturday afternoon in October was doing its best. Leaves light, the particular feeling of a day that would be easy to remember. I haven't either, Tatum said. June's dad has been out of the picture since she was 2. I've had other priority. So have I, but, he exhaled. But it turns out wanting something and having other priorities are not always mutually exclusive. Tatum looked at him for a long moment. Charlie told me last week, Daniel said, that he thinks you're the best person we've ever hired. He told me he thinks Beverly's cookies are the best thing about the office. He told me that too. You're both on his list. He paused. You're at the top. Something expanded quietly in Tatum's chest. The kind of thing you can ignore for a while if you're busy enough, and then suddenly you're sitting in a parked car on a Saturday in October and you are not busy enough. Ask me, she said. He looked at her. What? Ask me whatever you were working up to. Daniel was quiet for a moment. Then, with the specific decisiveness of someone who has thought about something for long enough, would you want to have dinner with me? Not a work thing, not a kid thing. Just dinner. June was asleep in the back seat. Charlie was still narrating the theropod exhibit to himself in a low, committed murmur. Yes, Tatum said. I would like that. And Daniel smiled. Not the editorial director's smile. Not the measured professional expression she'd learned to read over 3 months of shared hallways and early mornings, but the actual one, the real one. The one that started in his eyes before it reached anything else. Saturday, he said. Saturday. She got June out of the back seat, managing the half-awake transfer with the expertise of 5 years of practice. June slung over her shoulder like a very opinionated bag of flour. Tatum turned back to wave. Daniel was still watching. He raised his hand. Charlie's voice drifted from the open car window. June, I wrote you a note about the Stegosaurus. I'll give it to you Wednesday. June, eyes still closed, said clearly and from apparently far away. Velociraptor. That's not what the note is about. Tatum carried her daughter upstairs, smiling the whole way up, the kind of smile that stays because it doesn't need an audience. 3 weeks later, on a Thursday, Beverly brought lemon cookies instead of chocolate chip, and the office gathered around the break room table as it always did. And Charlie was there because it was an early release Wednesday, which had become a Thursday that week due to a school holiday. Charlie was explaining to Walt, who received the explanation with his customary meaningful nod, why the sauropods deserved more representation in popular media. Daniel came to stand beside Tatum at the edge of the break room. He's going to be fine, Tatum said quietly. Yeah. Daniel watched his son accept a cookie from Beverly with solemn gratitude. I think so too. You both are. Daniel looked at her sidelong. We have been for a while, actually. He paused. I just didn't know what the missing piece looked like. Tatum took a cookie from the plate. And now? Now I'm starting to get a clearer picture. Beverly, from across the room, looked between them with the serene awareness of someone who has been in an office long enough to know when something is happening. She said nothing. She simply put 2 more cookies on a separate plate and left it conspicuously between them. Walt left a post-it note that said, "Good," that was all it said. And Tatum thought about the Tuesday morning 3 months ago. The elevator that closed, the pages that scattered, the boy who was trying very hard not to be scared, the interview she'd almost missed. She thought about the gap between where you think you're going and where you end up, and how the gap is not always loss and is sometimes, if you stop when you should stop and help when you should help, and let the pages land where they land, the whole point.